David, take her away.
Good morning or afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our first V9 technical webinar. This webinar, we're going to focus on new features. A lot of you have already updated, and you're probably still curious about what all the features you've gotten. And this webinar is also for those of you who haven't updated yet, so you can decide if you want to go ahead and get the brand new V9. It's got a lot of new stuff. You'll see some major changes to the interface, but you'll still find that it's comfortable to use. It's still the same 3DESIGN you know and love, just with a lot of improvements. So to get started, we're going to jump right into our home screen. You see the home screen. We now see some different icons. Again, it works pretty much the same way. It's just you now see the viewport already. We're not in a separate screen like in the old versions. You're going to find 4 icons now in the to get started. You have access the part module and open a document like we had in previous versions. But you can now also jump right into Sketch or 3Shaper in the modeling module. So you can jump into Parts, Sketch, or Shaper, or open a document from here. You'll see your 6 recent apps, your 6 recent projects at the bottom. Instead of a simple list with a tiny little icon, you now have these nice big icons with your recent documents. Jump right into. And you'll find we now have 4 shortcuts for different things at the top. These now open all in your browser instead of in the 3DESIGN viewport, so no more slow loading, and you can go right to the forum and log in and keep your login, stayed in, all that fun stuff. So you can go to directly to Facebook and YouTube. Facebook is going to take you to the main Facebook page. Don't forget to follow us at 3DESIGN USA as well for if you're in the US here. And if you're not in the US, you can still follow us. You get different information. Go ahead and jump into the part module, and we'll take a look at the rest of the interface changes. Snap my window there for a second. So the first thing you'll see is the title bar is much cleaner. We've moved a lot of things from the title bar to make room for a quick access toolbar, which we'll talk about here in a second. All your file, edit, view menus, etc. have now been moved into this context-sensitive logo here. So you have your stacked windows here. All the toolbars are still the same here. Takes a little getting used to. Once you're used to it, you'll find it's nice to use. All your main functions like new, open, save, etc. have been moved out of the file menu right at the top, so you can get to those quickly. Everything else in here is pretty much the same. We'll talk about some changes in there as we need them. We have some shortcuts for save right here on the toolbar, so you can still use Control or Command S, or you can click right here to do a quick save. And you have shortcuts for undo and redo at the top as well. Okay. The title of your document is still here in the toolbar. You've noticed they've shortened it using a letter and number combination, so we don't have that long 50-character file name going across the top. Most people save over that anyway and name the files themselves. Okay. The clock is still here. It starts automatically. There's been some little updates to make it a little easier to use. You can pause it by just clicking on it now, and you can double click to reset it. So, slight change, but nice to have. And then for Windows users, we now have an extra button here in the corner for Restore. This will allow you to show the your Windows taskbar on top of the window, so you can go between full screen with or without the taskbar. That would be for the PC side only. Okay. You'll notice the interface changes. We have new transparent windows, and they're all undocked by default. You can quickly, easily slide them around, change the sizes. If you're working in multiple screens, it's still really nice to have that set up. You can drag your toolbars off the screen onto your other monitor. They will go opaque then, so you can see them more clearly on the other screen in case you have a lot of stuff on your desktop. To snap your windows, if you want to keep them docked like you're familiar with in the old version, you'll notice that the screen highlights when you're to the side or to the corner. You can snap them into place. Okay. The history tree is now transparent on top of the viewport. You'll probably already notice that the viewport has been stretched out all the way to the edge of the screen, so you have a lot more area to work. It feels like you have a lot more space. It's very nice to have. You can move around the tree with a little handle. We'll snap that back to the side. You can also double click that handle to show the actual window. That's helpful for resizing the tree. So you can grab the edges and resize them. And also for scrolling, now that the viewport is behind the window, sometimes if you don't have the window showing, you have to be on top of the text to be able to scroll. Again, takes a little getting used to, but once you get used to it, it's not so bad. You still have the, real quick, we have the properties is its own floating window, and you can set that over in the corner the way you had it before, or you can put it on top of other windows, move it around as you like. You still have the ability to create your editors all in the main toolbar. So if you want your properties in a tab, especially if you're working on a smaller screen, it'll switch between tools and properties automatically. If you want to go back to a traditional tree in a window, you can create a tree here as well. If you control click and slide that off, that'll put your tree back into a normal window with the opaque background if you slide it off screen. There's a new option in the view menu if you want to turn off the new tree and use the old tree. Just hide the original history tree and work with a window like you're used to. So very customizable. You can set it up the traditional way or using the new methods. It's all up to you on how you like to work. Let me bring my tree back. I'm going to need that later. Okay, let me pull up a ring real quick so we can see some of the other new interface changes. Okay, so I'm going to talk about the compass. All right, let's talk about the 3D viewer setters real quick first. So if you are running a OpenGL 4.2 or higher graphics card on the PC side, you're going to see some new visual effects. We'll talk about the Mac side of that a little bit later at the end of the presentation. I have a few notes on Mac users. But there's a new option for the 3D viewer settings in the view menu. And we'll go through these real quick to show you what's been added. Like I said, these are just special visual effects. It's kind of like when you're running a video game, not everyone can access them. The program will detect your graphics card automatically and let you know if you have access to those. Most modern graphics cards will be able to support this on the PC side. So we have a vertex buffer object mode. This takes all of your graphics computing and takes it off of the CPU and puts it onto your graphics card. It'll speed up the program a little bit, but it's really for opening up your processor for when you're doing multitasking. You're running other programs in the background, like I am here. I'm running screen recording and PowerPoint and a bunch of stuff in the background while I'm also presenting here. So that helps me with that sort of processing in the background. Anti-aliasing, it's a small effect. You should see a little bit smoother edges on your models if you're using that mode. Ambient occlusion is a shadowing effect. You can see some slight shadows between your objects. It's a lighting effect. This is going to kind of highlight the differences between your objects a little bit. Again, subtle effect. And then finally, the object independent transparency. Another fancy shader effect for when you're freezing your objects. You can see a lot less artifacts and things inside the transparent objects. So things are a little more clear when you're freezing things. Okay. In the second tab, we have some other special effects. I have them turned off at the moment. Let me unfreeze this. There is a new mirror effect and a grid, and then a shadow effect. Okay, you can see at the top, by turning all of these options on, I'm really pushing all the graphics memory on my graphics card. Things can slow down a little bit, so you may not want to, as you're working, run all of these effects. Most people will use them for showing the ring to a client or taking screenshots and things like that. So with the mirror effect, you have a reflection underneath your ring, just a nice little effect to make it a little more realistic environment. You can adjust the reflection shape, strength, and then shadows based on a light source. You can change the light source direction, move the shadows around. Again, just to add a little effect to the on-screen rendering. And of course, the grid could be. This is not the Snap 2 type grid that you will see in the sketch mode or in the planes. Just a nice effect with the lighting. to kind of show it more of a technical view. You can turn that off as well. And then the 3DESIGN logo by default is the bottom of the screen. It also can be moved to the center. I like it there at the bottom. Okay, so to keep things running smoothly for this presentation, I'm going to turn off those effects. Finally, the third tab, they moved a lot of stuff out of the F12 options that deal with the display so that you can quickly get to them here. And that's where you can change things like the compass size, the object in the compass, your scroll wheel speed, your screen width, your hotspot size, and then max triangles and texture sizes. So those are all in this new 3D viewer menu. Real quick on the Mac, the windows are going to be the same as far as moving around. Your interface on the Mac is going to be exactly the same as the PC side. You'll just see some differences with the new graphics effects, which we'll cover a little bit later. So that's 3D viewer. We also have the new improved compass. This is another one that took me a little bit to get used to. It's a little different. We've got a lot of new options built into the compass. First of all, the compass can be moved around the screen on the bottom here, so you can move it to a more comfortable position. You'll notice that it's no longer just a box with the arrows. The box has been kind of expanded out, and there's been some rotation handles added into the center of the box. I find it, for those of you getting used to it, I find it easier now. In the old version, it was easier to click on the boxes, but because there's so much going on here, it's easier now if you just click the arrows, which I think on the old version felt a little less comfortable for me. So if you're struggling with the new compass, trying to get used to it, try clicking the arrows to rotate your screen 90 degrees instead of the box itself. Okay, we now have a dedicated home button. This is my favorite new part of the compass. In the old versions, you always had to go to the isometric view in the hidden menu. That only changed the view. The home button now also resets your zoom level to a normal size and gives you back the isometric view. Okay. In the right corner, you're going to find all your view shortcuts that used to be in the hidden menu. So your zoom all, your zoom 1, zoom 10, your isometric and perspective view, all your viewport layouts, etc. are still here. They're just now in the compass. And then finally, the bottom left corner is where you can change temporarily for this file what object you're viewing in the compass, and you can also turn the object completely off now. And then change the size of the compass. Okay. So as far as the new rotation controls, these kind of take the place of the old rotation controls that were in the hidden menu. You can now use the rotation in any view. It's not really based on the flat views like the old ones were. So you can grab the different axes and do rotations. You can also use Control and Shift to do 45 degree and 10 degree rotations. If you click these, it'll do a 90 degree automatically. So you can flip your ring. It's a much quicker way of rotating your ring around. You notice that it doesn't have to wait for the screen to actually rotate around. It flips the view instantly. So it speeds up those rotations when you want to get to the other side of your model. And again, without having to go into a flat view. When you're in a flat view, you still have, now you have the red ring to do a 180 flip. So if you want to quickly go from top to bottom, etc. So that's the new compass. Like I said, it takes a little getting used to, but you're going to find with the extra features, it's much nicer. Okay, next, let me open up a file here. Okay, I want to talk about the new right-click context-sensitive menus. As always, in 3DESIGN, you can right-click and get different options. You've got view options if you click in the empty space. We now have some right-click options, shortcuts and things that deal with history and suggested actions. You right-click an object, you can find out quickly what the object was created on. That would be the history of the object. So you can see this is a Boolean operation with the multi-cutters. So I can quickly go through its history, find out what I was built on. If I want to go back and adjust the curve from the loft, I can jump right into it. I can get right back to the sketch. It's going to speed up your workflow. You no longer have to expand out the tree fully and guess which object you're working on. One of my favorite new features, once you get used to it and you start using it more, It's going to speed up your workflow. Last edited is going to give you the last few objects that you've edited. I just opened the file, so I haven't done any editing, so the only thing I can do is go back to the part that I started in. But you'll see as you start working, you can quickly go back to the last thing that you changed in the properties. When you're working in the tree, you can also use those right-click shortcuts to look at certain things. So again, my created on and last edited. Clicking on certain objects underneath that is going to give you suggested tools. So I may want to create a surface from the curve of that stone. I might want to extrude the stone, crop and punch. The really nice thing about this is you're going to start clicking on items and realize that you can run tools on things you didn't realize you could do before. I can multi-pipe around the stone. I can revolve the shape of the stone. All kinds of cool things we can do with stones. And then there's the actual tools for stones. That would be if I wanted to create a bezel, a prong, a belt, a claw, stone cutter, azures, etc. So those are our suggested tools. And then finally back to our quick access toolbar. You see I've drag and drop some of my favorite tools here at the top menu. I like mine set up because I do a lot of switching between the jeweler's bench. You'll notice that the jeweler's bench is no longer here in the title bar. We have these icons to go from jewelers to solids. And my quick access toolbar, as long as I'm in the same module, will remain the same. So I can quickly go in and set up my channel, do my booleans, my mirroring, all that fun stuff without having to switch back and forth. You still have the shortcut for workbenches. It's a control tab. If you do a quick control tab, you can switch instantly between the two main benches, or you can cycle through by clicking it multiple times. So you may not have known that. That was an older feature. It's just been improved a little bit because now you can just quickly do a control tab without scrolling and switch instantly between your workbenches. Make a note of that question. Let's see. We've got quick access toolbar. Really easy to add tools to this. You just drag and drop. You can position them wherever you want in the order. Once they're positioned, you can't really move them around, but all you have to do is drag it off of the toolbar and then put it back in the position that you want if you want to reorganize them. Okay. It will switch toolbars if I'm in a different module. I have a different setup for my sketch mode. I have my favorite curves and tools in there. And then also for 3Shaper, when you go into 3Shaper, you'll have a different toolbar. Okay, so that's pretty much it for interface. Like I said, it's a big part of this update, the new interface. Takes a little getting used to, but once you get comfortable in it, you're going to find it's really nice, really speeds up your workflow. Do a lot of cool new things with it. So let's go next into new tools. So
A couple of questions on interface there.
oh yeah, let's see. We got some interface questions real quick before we change topics here. Let's see, starting with, can right-click created on be used on a frozen object? You can't right-click a frozen object because it's frozen. It's protected from being clicked on in the viewport, but you can still right-click your item in the history tree and get to your right-click menu, and you'll see all of the options, just like if you were clicking on the original object. Will the created on work on items designed in V8 or just V9? If you open up a V8 file, you should see the history just like you would in the history tree. So if you right click it, you should see the created on history as well. Into the presentation, I'd like to see deep image. Deep image hasn't changed. This update was just to the core V9. Deep image and 3Shaper are different modules that'll be updated individually throughout the development cycles. The 3D viewer menu, again, was back in the view menu from the main menu. So under view, 3D viewer settings is where you change your background, your layouts, screenshots, and you can also hide your history tree in here. And then, yes, you can still change your background color. With the new interface, I find that you have a lot more choices with background colors. I'll show you that real quick. In the old version, because of the way the curves and things looked, if you went with a lighter screen color, you kind of lost the visibility of your colors, but you can You can now use lighter colors and still see your planes and edges. Everything's a little more clear. So you have a lot more choices in background colors now. Same choice you had before, but now more colors are practical. Go back to the default. Okay, so I think that's it for now for interface questions. Let's move on to new tools. Okay, starting in the jeweler's bench, we have a new ring builder. This is the bypass ring. Okay, I'm going to start that off with a finger size, like most of our ring builders. You can start with a finger size, or you can start with a built-in curve. A bypass ring is just another builder using a lot of the tools that you would have to normally do manually and program to get it to work the way you want. This is all set up so you can build your bypass rings parametrically. And again, this is going to build your paths for you, and it'll also allow you to go ahead and sweep it just like the rail builder. You can use it just to set up paths and manually sweep it later, or you can go ahead and just build the ring directly in here. So we're not going to go into all the details right now. We're going to follow up this webinar with new videos and more webinars going into more detail and some of the functions a little bit later, because we have a lot to cover today. But real quick, you can change, just like all your other builders, you can change the different settings using sliders, different angles. You can also use your parameters on the left side. The ends can be standard for a standard bypass, or you can do some bending on them. This is using a tangent handler. Should be familiar with some of your other builders like the Signet ring and the advanced ring. So we can shape our bending of our bypass around like a crown or a center stone. You can do multiple curve sweeps with bending. You can do a 2-rail sweep. This will keep your profiles from flipping over as you're going around the bends. If you're doing a standard, you can do a 3-rail sweep. And finally, we can add a section by clicking on Create 3D Shape. This will allow me to go into my library or use a drawn curve. While I have the library open, I'll show you that we have finally updated the symbol library quite a bit. Under the symbols, we've got a new bunch of sample files for you, including some 3Shaper objects. I personally went through and rebuilt the entire 2D symbol library for prongs, rails, and shanks. You'll see it's much more organized, a lot of new shapes. I've resized them so they don't come in giant. I've moved all the start points to nice positions for extracting curves. You're going to find the 2D shapes are a lot more user-friendly now. Tons of stuff in here. I've also created some new chains. So some new chain types, snake, rope. I think the rope is old. Some Rolo chains, some links, so some different chains for presentations. Somebody has added some deep image assets. The nice thing is people keep asking, they want their own props in deep image. You can import anything into deep image. So they've given you some samples that you can use as props in deep image. You just select those when you select your ring. What else is new in here? There's some new stones for rendering. These are not parametric stones like you would have with the stone builder, but you can replace your stones using these new stones just for rendering purposes. Because the parametric stones have some funny cuts on them sometimes, these will render really nicely. So those have been included for you. Ring shanks, I've replaced those with actual parametric ring shanks, so you can change all of the curves, thicknesses, widths, settings, etc. in here. And also the settings have been updated with parametric versions as well for some quick bezel set stones. The Swarovski library has been updated. We now have the most current library of Swarovski stones, including stones that haven't been released yet this year. So lots of stone options in the Swarovski library now. So just a quick note on the library update. We've been asking for a library for a while. So let me go in and choose my shank for my sweeping here. I'll just grab one. Oh, that one comes in the wrong rotation there. Let me pick something a little. Oh, no, it's not. I'm just looking at it funny. Okay, came in the right way. But you can automatically add your profiles. You can add multiple profiles in there and go ahead and sweep your ring, or you can, like I said, sweep it manually. Real quick, I'll show you some samples of some bypass rings again, so we can move on and get everything covered here today.
There's also a question on bypass.
And then we'll open it up for questions on the bypass here in a second. Okay, so here's a couple of bypass rings that have been preset. So you can see I'm bending around a stone. Another example here. This one has a multi-bulge on the end to clean up the cap at the end. So just some quick samples. Like I said, we'll cover the more details on how to use the bypass ring in some tutorials a little bit later on. Okay, so questions we have on the bypass. Once you're happy with overall shape, can you take it out of symmetry in order to change one of the fingers? Unfortunately, the way it's built, it is a symmetrical bypass. If you want to do an asymmetrical bypass, you can follow my old tutorials on asymmetrical bypass rings. Or you can possibly use the new deformation tools and maybe deform one side from the other. We'll get into that a little bit later. So I think that's it for bypass for now. Go back to the jeweler's bench. Another new tool. This isn't really a new tool, but the Azure tool has been moved into its own separate tool. It has some new properties, some different things you can change in there. It was moved out of the advanced pave to just save some room in the pave, and it makes it a little easier for setting your Azures. Sometimes in the old version, if you didn't add Azures at the beginning before you validated, there were some issues adding them later. So now it's separate. So that's pretty much it. Like I said, there's some improvements to the scaling and things like that in there. Some nice little changes. Next, the other new tools we'll find in the jeweler bench is the new reporting section. There's 6 new report functions, new tools, and the new technical drafts. Okay. I was going to go in a little more detail on these, but I want to get to some of the other stuff. Let's set up a couple of them, and then I'll show you the final results. Let me open up my ring here. We'll run the report on this ring, starting with the material cost. So I'll select the parts of the object that are the materials that I want to measure, and we'll run the material cost report. Okay. So for the costing, you can now put in the unit weight that you're measuring from. I have per gram, and you can put in the gold price for that day. So I just put in $30 here. I don't know what the gold is per gram today, but just for a sample. So this will go ahead and calculate your material costs and place it onto the screen. You can also still run plating cost, dimension cost, plating by volume. There's some other costing you can add. Oops. What did I click on? There you go. Meant to go to this one. You can add other costs in here as well. Hourly rates, cost related to length, other costs as well. So lots of options to set this up. You now have orientation options for the way they're displayed on the screen. You noticed in the old reports, if you had a bunch of measurements on the screen, they all started to kind of stack on top of each other. Now you can change the orientation from different angles, as well as placing it on which side of the box you want. So much more customizable. In the second tab, you can now add a logo and a header to your report. I have my 3DESIGN logo in here. You can put your company name, your title, website. You can customize which columns you want to display, rename the columns, so very customizable. You'll see there is a new feature next to all of our text boxes. You can now enter special characters without having to know what the Unicodes are. You can use this little keyboard to put in things like copyright symbols, trademark symbols, things like that. Anything you might use in a technical draft as well. That goes for all text boxes. And then finally, you can still set up your fonts and text sizes. You can now change the text color. And then here's where we can change the layout for where our tool or our display on the screen are. Okay, so once you're happy with your report, you can actually generate your report with the little printer icon. We'll see what the stone cost report looks like. You can see the nice header at the top with my website and title. My material cost with a description, the details, quantity, total weight, and then the total on the side. You can print this directly or save it out as a file. There's tons of file types using Jasper reports, PDFs, rich text, HTML if you want to put it into an email or a website, comma separated values if you want to add it to a spreadsheet, tons of new report options. If I don't print it or save it and I go ahead and validate it, it's going to keep a copy of the report in my history tree over here. So real quick, let me set up a few more reports. I won't go into all the details. I'm going to do a stone cost report. This one I don't have to select the stones. It's going to detect the stones automatically. I can order the list based on carat size or quantity. And for each one, I can go in and tell it what the carat price is for that specific stone. You can also modify the carat weight here so that your reports are proper. You've probably noticed in the old stone reports, it was all done mathematically, and sometimes certain stones would have different carat weights and totals. And so now you can go in and customize it and make it specifically to the stone that you're selling and not what 3DESIGN is building. So very nice features. Otherwise, the features are all the same. We go ahead and run the report. We see we've got our graph here with, or not graph, our chart here with all of the stone cuts, the material I used, the carat that was entered, the price per carat, and some totals. And then you get some charts for showing the quantity. There's different charts you can choose from. You've got, that's going to be in the chart type here. There's the vertical histogram and horizontal. You can do pie charts and 3D pie charts as well. So you can choose how you want to display your quantities. So nice reports there. I'll go ahead and validate that and add to the tree. Real quick note on quotation. We can gather those two reports, the cost reports I do, and add a % margin. So this will allow you to set up quoting for your, for your final quotes for your customers, things like that. Skip that one for now. We still have a stone color report. It's been improved quite a bit though. This will also detect your stones automatically. We now have the MLO standard for color coding. So if you're using standard sizes and you use MLO for setting your stones, if you're curious about that, ask me a little bit later or let me know. I can explain what that is. Or you can still set up your colors with custom colors, whatever you like. So we can go ahead and color code and create our stone charts for setting. So we'll color code the different stone sizes. That's the report. We have the screenshots now built into this, to its own tab. You can take screenshots or import renderings or whatever you feel like there. We'll just go ahead and take a few screenshots of this to add them to the report. And when we run the report, we have our chart explaining which colors go with which stones, the quantities, descriptions, and our screenshots so that the setter knows which stones go where in the ring. So that is the new stone color report. And then we have a new gallery report. This is going to allow me to quickly take a bunch of screenshots instead of having to take them manually and then composite them in a photo editor. We can do that right here inside 3DESIGN and include our header and logos and all that. So I'm going to hide these costs here. I don't want them on the screen. And we'll do our screenshot from different views. And again, if you want full renderings, you can also import those in and include them in your report. So this will generate a screenshot gallery with all your screenshots. You can rename these, set them up the way you want. So we'll go ahead and validate that and include that in my history. And then the last button is the merge reports. This is going to gather all the reports that I've generated in the tree into its own report. So we get, we can set up the layouts, the order, all that fun stuff. And we get our final report that takes all those reports and gathers into a nice little booklet. Okay, that can be exported or printed directly. Once you export it, you can do a lot of fun stuff with it in different programs. I will show you an example. You've probably seen this in some of the videos or on the web. We were working with Flipping Book is a nice little program that you can create these nice digital magazines that you can distribute on the web or on your website. And we just took all the reports and generated in Flipping Book. So Flipping Book is not part of 3DESIGN. This is a separate program, but just to show you what you can do using other programs with our new reports. So So back to one more feature in the reporting section, and that is the new technical drafts. I'm going to open up a file that I set up with some measurements so I can show you how measurements work in here as well. I won't have time to set up all the measurements and show you that right now, but just to show you that you can import vector shapes into your technical drafts as well. So let me make sure my measurement is in there. Yes. Okay, so first I'll show you the default way you can use this. I'm going to select, I'm not going to include the stones just to save on rendering time for this demo. And we'll just run the technical draft. Give that a second to generate. Okay, so with technical drafts, you get these nice line drawings, your CAD type drawings that you see from engineering programs for setting up our drafts. Okay, so we can move these around. To get the different views, we have some quick shortcuts. I can quickly click these little arrows and get to the side view. Go ahead and click on the top here and get my top view. I have snapping automatic, so I can snap these into position. I'm going to do one more over here in the corner and show you that you can change that to a custom view. In the second tab here, we'll do a custom orientation so we can rotate this around using the axes, set up our 3/4 view the way we want. Okay. There's some different rendering options. It's wireframe by default. There's also a gray image if you want a grayscale image for your draft, or you can actually render it with the materials. Okay. So this is the default way to use it. Like I said, if you just want a nice presentation with simple line drawings, you can again just use it for a gallery type effect, or we can go in and do some really nice professional setup drafts. So in the library, in the parametric section, we've included some templates for drafting. There is the A3 and the A4 format, A4 for US and A3 for most of Europe and other countries. So we'll go ahead and import that in. Okay, and we'll see that this is just a sketch that has been created using some of our new tools. You'll see a little bit later, making it parametric, and it's saved as a parametric object. So I can quickly go in here and change the parameters using the advanced parametric layout. We've got the US and the European standard for projection. You can change your language from English and French. You can add your file types. So if I'm including with this project a VTF and an STL, I'll check those. The logo is just a logo that was created in 3DESIGN in the sketch mode. You can import that in. Right now I've got the 3DESIGN logo in there. You can create your own logos. And then all of the text can be changed. So the name of the file, some notes, the client's name, your company information, page numbers, revision numbers, dates, scale, who the designer was, all that fun stuff is built into the template. So we'll go ahead and just validate that for now. And I'll show you how you can bring these into your drafts and make some really nice professional drafts. So I'm going to go ahead and select my objects again. Again, I'll skip the stones for now just to make it a little quicker. And I'm going to go ahead and include my vectors for the template as well so that they go ahead and get plugged in automatically. So we'll go ahead and generate the draft. Okay, so you see my template is brought in. We've got my ring. Go ahead and show you, you can change the scale. Go a little bit bigger here. And I'll show you how to bring in, I pre-measured one of the widths of this ring. If you go to Other Objects, I can select my measurement. Oh, my measurement is not the one I meant to set up earlier. That's going to bring in your measurement that you already created in the tree and stamp it onto your object as well, so you can set up widths and things like that. Let me see if I can fix that real quick for you so you can see what it's supposed to look like. I think I changed something in this design. Yeah, it looks like I'm measuring a prong instead of the side of the ring. That still works though. Oh, there it goes. Now it's flipped back. That's what I meant to measure, the width of the ring. So we'll just go ahead and recompute that. You'll notice the recompute button is now a button at the top of the tree. It is no longer a button at the bottom. The cool thing about it is you can now recompute without having to validate most tools. So as you're making changes to curves or making edits to prongs or whatever you're changing, sometimes you can update without having to validate first and then go back into it. And also you can now set up a shortcut. I have the N button on my keyboard set up, so I can recompute by just clicking on a keyboard shortcut instead of having to click the button on the screen. Let's see, back into my draft. There we go. So you can see it's stamping on my width size onto there. So unfortunately, you do have to still measure your objects using the measure tool. It doesn't do automatic measurements. Unfortunately, it's just the way our our modeler works. Doesn't have those built-in measurements automatically. Hopefully, one day we'll get to find a solution for stuff like that. So that's the new report functions. Lots to do in there. Lots of fun stuff. Let's move on to the solid module. There's a couple of new tools added in here as well. The first one being we now have text in the curve section, in the 3D curve section. And the advantage of that is we now have parametric text. So for example, what you saw in that template, of course, was done using this new tool. But I can set up my text. We now include a single line font for your drafts, or you can use all your other installed fonts just like before. Go with Accurate. Where is it? So we can set up our 3D text. The nice thing is that we can link this text to planes. We can link it to support objects, all kinds of fun stuff. The other thing we can do is link it to a slot. And what I mean by that is I'll just create a area, perhaps using a sketch. I can use objects as a slot, all kinds of things. So what I'll do is in my text, limit it to a slot, and I can draw a shape, or I can use my custom shape. So that's going to keep my text parametrically linked to that size of the box. So you can imagine if I had projected this box and I later changed the width of my signet ring or whatever I'm doing, and I change the size of the box, my text will resize along with it as soon as I recalculate. Okay. So that's the new 3D text tool. Okay. And then the other tool that I want to mention, I'm going to come back if we have some time and show you the envelope. There's two new tools in the deform section. There's the create an envelope and the deform using an envelope tools. These are new deformations that we can use 3-shaper meshes to deform our objects. Just like your other deform tools, complex solid objects that are created in 3DESIGN, not so easy to deform, but you can definitely use it on basic shapes, things that haven't been Boolean, just like your other deform tools. So we'll come back to that. I'll show you some examples of that. I plan on covering that fully in the next webinar, so I can show you how to actually create those rigs and do a lot more with it. Okay, so that's going to bring us to improvements on old tools. A lot of stuff that we don't see initially. And we'll go back to the jeweler's bench and talk about some quick improvements to some of the old tools. The ring size builder. Simple little change, but it's going to make things so much easier when you get into creating channels and doing UV wraps and unwraps. As you know, start points create an extra edge. By default in the old ring size builder, it was always at the top of the ring. So if you wanted to put text or texture or anything across the top of the ring, you had to kind of either rotate the ring or figure out a way to cut it up and fix the surfaces. Now you can simply move the starting point with a little button down here to the bottom of the ring, leaving the top as one single surface. So like that simple little change, but makes things much nicer. Okay. Improvements to stone. The stone builder has a new feature for baguettes. If we go into baguette here and we choose the gem cut option, Baguettes, by default, in old versions of the Stone Builder, were to a point at the bottom. We can now go into the third tab and add a bottom edge ratio. It's going to allow us to create our baguettes with the bottom edge that we can also turn in either direction. Okay. So a nice improvement to the baguette portion of the Stone Builder. Again, simple change, but it solves a lot of problems that people were having with certain stones.
Don't forget the twist.
I'm not gonna forget the twist. Okay. Advanced pave. Lots of new improvements in here. Let me load up a ring with some setup here. Expert pave. Okay. So with the new Expert Pave, we have in the Frontiers section, we can still test frontiers based on our surface splits, or we can use curves as frontiers. So I'll go ahead and select this outer curve here, and we can set the border to the curve. Let's say I want 0.3 millimeters for a border around that curve. So if I'm in the manual mode, by default we have snapping to the border, and we can visually see the border now. So we know exactly, where our stones can go up against that border. So that makes setting manually nice and easy. You can also go back and turn off the blocking so that you can display the frontiers but not have it snap. So if you do need to override that a little bit when you're placing your stones, you don't have to worry about either having the frontiers completely blocking. You can just use it as a visual guide. Okay. We can also use that frontier curve in our auto pave settings. Just go ahead and throw some stones in here. Not the best layout that I chose there, but you can see that they're going to limit to the curve instead of the surfaces now. And then I want to show you there's been an improvement to the concentric. The old concentric tool by default was a little rough, keeping it the way you wanted it. Now using curves in concentric, we can place our concentric layout along the curve and choose where to begin along the curve, of course. And we can flip which side of the curve we're going on. So I want these inside the curve. And by default, it's not going to fill up random stones in the center like the old version. So if I go ahead and pave this, we can get a nice concentric pattern around our curves. So you can imagine setting up multiple curves and doing nice concentric paves using those features. You can also fill to the center and also order the list so that it's going to place, my 1 millimeters first, and then it'll do a row of, 0.5 millimeters or whatever sizes you set up. So some improvements there to the concentric. It's much more usable now. What else is in the pave? That's going to be pretty much it. There's some other little improvement. Oh, well, let me show you this. The scatter buttons have been changed a little bit. They're now buttons instead of the old text buttons. But namely in here, the best part here is we now have the quantity and the description list as you're doing your pave. So you don't have to run a stone report or count manually how many stones you have. I can quickly see that it placed 42 1 millimeter stones. So little change, but welcome. Is there anything else big in here? Oh, and here's a really big feature. Back in the preview tab. So preview allows us to see what the stones are going to look like as we're placing them, so we don't have to validate and go ahead and jewel our stones and then go back and change them later. But they've added a new button in here that says Add to History Tree. Go ahead and turn that on and validate. You'll see that it's going to automatically create a stone and jewel them for me. So I no longer have to go back and create the stone after the fact and jewel them manually. So it's going to save you a little time. A great new feature. Okay. So that's it for now on the pave. Let me see if we have questions here. On multiple line text, can you control spacing between lines?
No.
No, there's not controls in the spacing. there might be ways to do that using the slot features. I'll have to kind of play around with that and see if there's a way to set that up parametrically to control that. You can always do multiple lines of text as separate text objects, and then I think limit those to a slot. But I don't think it would control the spacing so much. So, but yeah, it's something I'll have to play around with, and that might give me some ideas for suggestions for updates in the future. So, good question. Thanks. All right. Improvements to the jeweling tool. We now have, if you ever use the drill directions in the Pave where you can angle your drill holes, you notice in the old version it automatically also angled your stones. So your stones would be angled in the seat. Really annoying. Now by default, they don't follow the drill direction. Your stones will remain flat to the surface and you can have angled holes. Again, little change, but makes those types of designs much easier. The channel tool has a little bit of a new feature when you're working on multiple curves. You might have had problems with the old version where sometimes your stones would flip around on the ends of the curves. Let's see, I have a file set up to show this. Yes, channel. Okay, so when you're working on multiple curve stone channels like this one, okay, we have the new place stones on the surface object. Okay, that's going to go ahead and set your stones to the surface like you would if you were doing a single channel or a single path channel. That's going to fix a lot of those problems you had with twisting and things like that. So again, simple little update, but makes life a lot easier for those problems we're having. Okay. Brings us to belts and claws. Okay, both belts and claws have one new option, and that is for create one single surface. You guys, most of you should be familiar with this from version 8. A lot of our sweeping tools have this option. That's so our surfaces don't get split in half. One of the benefits of having that single surface is turning some of your objects directly into 3-shaper objects. So your belts using, oops, I didn't turn it on. Using the single surface is going to give me a nice clean mesh if I convert this right into a 3-shaper object. So you can imagine with claws going in and doing custom bending your claws using 3-shaper, all kinds of fun stuff you could do by being able to take those directly into 3-shaper. I'll show you the What's New document. There's a list of all the tools in there that has the one single surface option, and keep in mind that using that option is great for texturing, unwrapping, extracting curves, and also taking those objects into 3-shaper as cleaner meshes. So some great functions in there, and now we have it in belts and claws as well. And then finally in the jeweler's bench we have multi-cutters. Let me create a stone real quick. Okay, so the interface has been cleaned up to match our other interfaces from version 8, so we're using icons instead of a bunch of text. But there's been some changes as well to the way you transition from the top part to the bottom part. By default, we have the extra split here in the old version. You can now turn that off so that you get a single seat into the drill hole. You also can do circular section. So if I'm doing a baguette shape, I can still work with circular sections. That's going to allow me to blend different shapes together. On the third tab, we now have some new options as well. The top pipe right now is based on, you can do as bottom, custom, or none. So custom, I can, again, vary my shape so I can have different shape drills from top to bottom. You're going to see much smoother transitions between those shapes, a lot less Boolean issues with the new cutters. You can still do custom shapes, and we can still go back and do the the bottom and top shapes the same. And you can see here by using a square, you can see that much nicer blend between my circular seat and the square shape. So that's going to make setting your drill holes for baguettes and other shapes much nicer. So that's the new improvements to the stone multi-cutters. Okay. We're going to go way over.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I should have probably warned you at first. We only scheduled an hour. I knew going into this we have a lot to cover, and I definitely want to show you at least a little bit of all the new features. So you're there. So bear with me. You're welcome to leave at 11, or it is 11 now, or stick with me. I got a lot more to show you. So definitely going to be going over quite a bit here because I want to give you time to ask questions as well. Okay, stop for a second and see what questions we have now. Will the recording be available to view again later? Yes, I am recording. As always, we'll see the quality at the end, and hopefully I'll be able to post it. If I don't put it in the training lounge, I'll have it available to send directly, so you can always ask for that. I think we're going to be okay. It's recording really nicely, so I think you should be able to see this later. Okay. So that's going to be the jeweler's bench improvements. Let's go into solids, and that'll be answer the next question. Can I show the new twisted wire? That's in the solid module. Improvements to Multipipe. So the Multipipe now has a fourth tab, a new mode, where we can go with a twist in the pipe. So I probably should draw a curve for you to see that. So we run our pipe. The pipe options are the same. We can change the shape and the thicknesses of the piping. But if I turn on the twist mode, we have this automatic twisting. And that is going to open up the fourth tab. We can make some changes to this. By default, it's a 3-strand twist. We can change the number of strands. Okay. Reverse the direction of the twist. We can change the number of turns. So the more turns, the tighter the twist is going to be. Okay, we can also base the twist on the length of the curve. We can offset the distance. So if you wanted to do something like a twisted up bangle or have the twist not actually touching, you can play around with that and adjust the angle. Pretty much it. Very simple builder, easy to use. Just go in and change the parameters and we automatically get twists. Okay, so if you've seen the videos and seen some of the previews of V9, you've seen some of the type of designs we can do with twisting. I'll show you some examples that I've done. Some nice twisted rope for a border. Here's some twisted earrings using different materials. Don't ask me how you would cast those. We'll leave that to the caster to figure out. I just do the design. Here's where I used a twist and then mirrored it to create this nice braid effect. Here's a good old twist on a split shank ring. And then here's a men's band where I used the twist to create this nice pattern down the center. So definitely opens up some options for you for twisting. No more trying to create lofts and twisting using the deform tool and breaking the objects by over deforming it, things like that. So one of my favorite new updates. Okay. So far with booleans on twist, I haven't had too many issues. The mirroring of the twist can be problematic because of the coplanar surfaces. I did have some issues trying to get those to boolean together. So you will have to kind of you know, like most Boolean issues, kind of adjust them so they overlap nicely, play around with it to get the Booleans. They are very complex shapes, so you do have some of those similar issues. And then back to the, yes, we will be recording this session. You should be able to view it online later on. Okay, a few more new tools or new additions to tools. Let me go back to that channel ring I started earlier. The in-between 3D tool has a great new improvement to make it more useful. In the curve section. I'm going to select my 2 curves here. In the old version, when you did an in-between, it placed your in-between directly between the curves. So it's not matching my surface. The new version, we have a drop option, so we can drop it to the nearest surface and actually get my in-between on top of the surface. So that's going to make setting channels and running text or whatever you're going to use this for. And then there's an offset built in, so you can offset that as well if you want to manually change the height of your curve. Okay. So again, little changes, but things are going to be much easier with that tool. And then we have improvements to the wrap along curve. Where is my frog? Okay, so where is my projected curve? There we go. Okay, so this is a 3-shaper object. This is the best kind of things you could deform. You can deform it quite nicely without breaking the mesh like you would on solids. So it should update pretty quickly here. You can still deform solids, just be careful that they're not too complex. As you know, deforms are very calculation heavy on NURB solids. So with the wrap-along curve, in the old version, you basically had the item stretch to the entire curve. Definitely need to change the angle on that. There we go. So it's stretching my frog all the way to the length of the curve. With the new options, let me go ahead and mess with my alignment. And we have the limit to object size option. This is going to allow me to deform to the curve, but keep my object from stretching to the length of the curve. Okay. With the limit to object size, we can also place the object in different sections at the beginning, middle, or end of the curve. Okay. So again, subtle little changes, but makes the tool much more useful. So we can bend my 3-shaper frog to the ring without stretching it end to end. Okay, so that's the wrap along curve. The measure tool, I'm not going to go into the whole setup of that, but it has been improved so you can place your measurements on planes. That's what allows me to import those into my technical